A while back, I took part in the Global Game Jam, and I have in front of me here the game that I created during that. The Global Game Jam is 48 hours, and this is what I managed to produce. So this was done in Love2D, which is a Lua all-in-one framework engine type thing, which was really fun to work with. I had not used it before. I had not really used Lua before. Um, and I don't think the options menu actually works there. Okay, let's just play the game. So this is what the game looks like. The theme for the jam was waves, and so my idea was based on sound waves. Oh yeah, so after I was starting roughing out the concept, an audio guy was wandering around. He had apparently just turned up a bit later and was asking people if they wanted audio in their game. So I was like, I need audio, and he helped me out with that. So we've got, which was kind of lucky that he was there because the audio in this game is pretty crucial. So we've got sounds for footsteps, and every time there's a footstep sound, it sends out like a little pulse wave, which was supposed to be sonar. And then over here, you should be able to see a zombie, or well, there's a zombie noise, and every time the zombie makes a noise, it sends out a little pulse as well. So the idea is whenever anything makes a noise, it becomes visible. If I press space, I use my sonar, and I can use that. And this big red thing beside me, that's lava. So the idea is I kill all the zombies by luring them into lava. So when the zombies hear a noise, they run towards it. So if I use my sonar here and run away, you can see I lured it into lava there. So let's go to level 2. Okay, so now you've also got to use your sonar though to actually see the world around you. So I can see there's a wall here, and then I can sneak around the side, use my sonar, and do that. I've played this game quite a lot, so I already know the layout of all the levels. One, two, come on. Oh crap. Oh, so it's easy to not think. And let's go to one of the layer levels. Oh, Ring of Fire. Oh, those levels are actually hard. I'll go. Let's see how the levels were actually made. Here, this is the original code for what I produced during the jam. And so each level is just a PNG. You can see I just painted black where the walls should be, green is where the zombies spawn, blue is where the player spawns, and then red is lava. That way it was really easy to create more levels. And I had a bunch of friends who were taking part in the jam in other teams. So whenever they had a break, I was like, come make a level for my game, please. And so that's why I've got a bunch of interesting ones here. Level Doge. This was just after Gabe the dog died, so one of my friends made a level which says Rip Gabe. Level Duracell, which is a battery with a lightning bolt. It might not be a battery, I'm not sure. Narrow, just a narrow corridor, and then Ring of Fire was one of the later ones we made. Now you've seen what I produced during the jam. I then went and polished that up quite a bit into what became this, and you can see we've got this awesome splash screen here. One of the problems I had was when people first started playing the game, they had no idea what was going on. So I put in this little intro thing to try and get people, give people a clue about what they're actually supposed to do. And you can see the options menu in this does actually work. So I'm going to turn the volume down quite a bit. And these both work as well, but I'll leave them as they are. Yeah, this is me. I did the programming. Audio was done by a guy called Chris. You can see him there. And then Bogdan, Sam, and Sam were two of my friends who helped make more levels. That's 3 people. 3 of my friends who helped make more levels. Let's go straight to level... narrow is actually quite hard. And it shows off some of the changes I made quite well. So you can see I changed the color coding. So now zombies are zombies produce green pulses. The player's footsteps make white pulses. If I go in here and then my sonar is blue, and you can see, whereas before the sonar was just a circle of increasing radius that was just drawn behind everything. So for like first I would clear the background, then I would draw the sonar. No, in fact, then I would draw the lava, then I would draw the sonar, and then the walls. So it would just make the walls appear to cover up the sonar. Here I'm actually using little physics particles and just firing out a whole bunch of them. So you get this cool, like you see the particles bouncing around, and it looks kind of awesome, in my opinion. And then I've also got some shaders which give me like this trail behind the particles. And let's see, this level is quite hard. So if I do that to try and lure this guy out, and because they'll bounce around corners now, which is kind of cool. So if I do that and then duck in, oh no. Oh, yeah, got him. Okay. Let's see if I can get the next one. Lure him a bit closer. So when a particle hits a zombie, each particle records where it was fired from. So the zombies run towards where they heard the sound coming from. That's how you're able to use your sonar in one place and then hide in a corner and hope that the zombie doesn't. Oh no. Hey, okay. Hope that the zombie doesn't find you. I'm kind of trapped here now. I'm not sure how. Oh, I made it past that one. You know what I'll do? If you get too close and the zombie hears your footsteps, they'll then start chasing you. See if I can lure this one to follow my footsteps. Oh, yeah. And it is possible to escape, but it's quite hard. If you run around in like the right little pattern, you can step one way and then immediately step in the other direction and get the zombie to avoid you. Anyway, we'll go to Ring of Fire. Was kind of cool. So you just got lava all around you, and there's basically no cover. So you've got to be quite careful about what you do. So I got 2 in there. Oh. I do want to put this game on Twitch. I had a bunch of bugs, but after the game jam, so I did the game jam down at Dundee Makerspace, and then at the Makerspace a couple of weeks later, I don't know, there was a play party where everyone who made games in the jam brought them along. So I got to take mine along there and have people play it. A lot of people still didn't understand what they were supposed to do, so my little intro didn't entirely explain what was going on. A lot of people thought they were moving the red. They thought they were the lava, and they were trying to move it around to do something. They were confused. I was confused by what they thought they were doing. Anyway. Hey, and it also records times now. So you can see I've got a high score there. And it's beautifully animated. Some nice polish. So this is the code for the original Game Jam version. And as I said, at the time I was just learning to use Love2D, and I hadn't used Lua before. So I didn't really know how to structure things very well. What I ended up doing was creating my own kind of state type system. So you can see Love has all these callbacks that it uses, like love.update, love.draw, love.xyz. That's how you handle joysticks and gamepads. Yeah, I think both versions of the game did have gamepad support in the end, which is pretty nice. So they support Xbox controllers, and I bought my own gamepad, which is like an Xbox controller clone, and got that working as well. Anyway, so yeah, Love has all these callbacks that it uses, and I was then, within that calling my current state function update, and then I was setting this current state to point to the different states. So I have like a main menu state, a playing state, and a pause state. by the end of the 2 days-ish, 2 or 3 days, I pretty much hit the limit of what I was able to do with my limited knowledge of Lua at the time and with the code I'd written. So as Lua doesn't have classes, it does have these things called tables, though. And tables can have functions as well as, well, like a function is a variable itself. So you can have a table that has functions, and then you can access them by their string name. So tables can either be, you can either look them up by index in the same way that you would an array in, say, C, or you can look them up by a string, and that's what allows you to, so you can say like whatever is in slot 1 of the table, I want the variable in slot 1, or you can say I want the variable with the name blah, and then I want to call it like a function. By messing with this table system, you can kind of create classes. In the end, I was messing around with a lot of different things, frantically trying to get stuff finished. I added gamepad support in the last like hour or something. I basically did a almost complete rewrite for the second version, which is much more organized. And you can see up here I made the use of a bunch of libraries. So I found this collection of libraries called Hump. And one of the great things about Lua, or especially in fact Love2D rather than just Lua, is it has lots of built-in libraries. Libraries are in general really easy to integrate. There's no complicated build system. The way I got these libraries working is I just created a folder, and the same folder as my main.lua, and then I just called that lib. Within that I made a folder for the library, and then I just put all the source files in there. So the Hump library has a bunch of modules. It's got a game state system, which works much better than mine, a camera system, timer, and it's got some helper functions, which allows you to use tables in a more class-like way. So anyway, it's got these different modules, and the way you load the libraries is literally just put a require, and it'll just follow this path, find them, and then include them there. And generally, libraries will return an object, so you just store that object. So I call the game state library, and I store it in a game state object, or table rather. And then whenever I want to use functions from the library, I just call them from this game state table. And you can even see just in main.lua things are quite a bit neater here. So there's like a bit of setup, a few globals that I set up. Lua kind of encourages you to use globals, sort of. Whenever you create a variable, it is global by default unless you prefix it with the keyword local, in which case it's scoped to the function or whatever you're in. The game state module in Hump simplifies a lot of things. So when I created the splash screen, I just called this state function, and that returns a table that's preloaded with all the sort of things necessary. And there's also this thing in Lua called metatables, which is like if a table doesn't have a particular member, then it will search in the metatable, I think is how it works. So you call the state object, it creates a table and sets up the metatable and blah, blah, blah. And then you just override the functions that you want in particular. But now the splash screen state can be accepted by the various state functions, so you can switch to it, and then when you call state.update, it just will use whatever the currently active state is. You can push them and pop them from the stack. It's generally pretty nice to use. Love2D has a lot of cool features built in, and so I'm 95% sure the audio library they use is OpenAL, because the functions they have are pretty much a one-for-one mapping to the functions in OpenAL. Oh yeah, so here I made this input device class, which is a kind of interesting example for me about some things in Lua which aren't possible in other languages. I'm creating this input, I've got this input device table, and then I'm giving it all these functions for the keyboard, for gamepads, and for joysticks. And they're all using this same prefix. I figured out all the inputs that I would need for my game. So I needed an up, down, left, and right input, a button, or just an action button for using your sonar, and then I had a start button so you could pause some other menu stuff. I needed these 6 actions, but then depending on what the user was using, if they just had a keyboard or if they had plugged in a gamepad or joystick, they would have to be mapped to do different things. And so I had this function called map input functions. So I took these generic, like button down A, and so here I'm using the prefix of that function. So like the first part of the function name. But then I'm concatenating that with the source name. So if I call map input functions with the argument as the string keyboard, then the axis x function gets mapped to axis. I can't say axis. The axis x function gets mapped to axis x keyboard. Or if I call it with an argument of gamepad, then axis x gets mapped to axis x gamepad. And so I'm looking up the functions by the string of the function name, which I thought was pretty cool, and certainly not something I could do or would know how to do. Maybe it's possible in C++. Love2D has a really nice way of packaging things for release. If you want to create what's called a .love file, that's just a zip archive. You take all your code, and all you have to make sure is that there's a main.lua at the top of your zip archive, and you just compress it into a zip. And then I rename that, so whatever you want, like, and then you replace .zip with .love, and say OK. And now you can just, assuming you have Love2D installed, you can just run that as it is and play the game. If you want to package it into an application, like I've done here, on OS X, you basically create the .love file, and then you disassemble the Love2D app. And so you take this and you copy the app itself, you do show package contents, and you put the .love file, I can't remember somewhere, I think it's in resources, and then you modify the info.plist, and then you get this double-clickable .app file, which you can give to anyone. Or you can actually package it for release on Windows, even from Linux or OS X. That's simply you download the Windows version of Love2D, and I had a script that would do this all automatically. So for when I was in the game jam, let's go back to here, I was looking for it before I started recording, and I can't actually find it, but it would take this info plist, which I'd pre-populated, and then it would use that. It would the script knew where the Love2D app was located. Disassemble. It would copy the app, disassemble it, insert my love file, and then it would do a Windows build at the same time. And so I just downloaded the Windows build from the website. Yeah, here we are, the love exe. And I think you just append all your code to the end of the exe, like to the end of the exe binary. I think that was how it worked. And then it becomes just your game is an executable on Windows, which is pretty awesome. My game was called Sounds in a Dark Room because that was what popped into my head first. As long as you're running it from this folder and the person, they've got all the DLLs and stuff, they can just double-click this exe and run your game. And so you can do all that. You can do the Mac build, the Windows build. If you want to distribute for Linux as well, generally people will just distribute the love file itself, and then whatever Linux distro they have will have some way of installing the Love2D framework so that they can just run the love file using whatever version of Love2D they have installed. And so my first ever Game Jam game was cross-platform on Mac, Windows, and Linux, which was pretty cool. I believe the original source code for what I did during the Game Jam, that is on GitHub, and I'll put a link to where you can download the app and the love file from the Global Game Jam website. I do intend to distribute the improved version on itch or something similar at some point in the future. I think it needs a little bit more bug testing. It's basically done, but I will put a link to that in the description, assuming I remember to, when that is uploaded. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.